Welcome back to another Micmac tabletop review. Today we'll be taking a look at the Polish CZAK LUCZNIK P-64 9x18 9mm Makarov pistol. Here's a pistol that may look familiar. Cold War pistol buffs have referred to this pistol as the CZAK. Note that it has import markings on the barrel here. ZM LUCZNIK Poland 9x18mm 9mm P-64. So it's a Polish-made pistol, a model P-64, chambered for the 9x18 Makarov round. P-64. That may sound familiar because I did a review of another P-64 pistol last year, the Radom P-64. Here's that P-64 pistol. Note that it only has P-64 stamped on its slide. No import markings. Remove the import marking on this one and you have identical pistols. They are both Polish P-64 or CZAKs produced at the same factory, even the same year. So why do I have two P-64s here? I usually don't buy two of the same gun, but I saw the second P-64 at a gun show a few months ago and I just couldn't pass it up. Not only is it in very nice condition with matching serial numbers and an extra magazine, but the price was hard to resist. I've taken this second P-64, which I'll call the LUCZNIK P-64, to the range a few times, and I've used this opportunity to compare it to my first P-64, which I'll call the Radom P-64, and which I've replaced its hammer and recoil springs. As a result, I've been able to verify this Radom P-64's function a bit more, which I'll detail in more detail later in this review. But probably a more important purpose of this particular review is to correct some mistakes I made last year when I posted the review of this Polish-made Radom P-64. That was episode 2023-13. It's a fairly nice Cold War era military law enforcement design pistol. If you watched that review, you may recall that I was quite critical of the P-64, especially its heavy function. But probably the worst thing was that I, like many others, presumed the P-64 was a Walther PPK clone. In fact, I spent a good portion of the video building my case on that issue. I'll admit that was a mistake. The aim of my videos is to provide accurate, comprehensive overviews, but sometimes I've gotten it wrong. Here's my Walther PPKs. As you can see, there's a resemblance between these two pistols. Given their similarities, you can understand why the P-64 has often been called a PPK clone. However, further research into the origins of the P-64 has changed my mind. Don't misunderstand me here, the similarities are still striking between the P-64 and the PPK. And I'm not saying now that the developers of the P-64 weren't influenced by the PPK. But basically in saying the P-64 was a clone of the PPK, I got it wrong. And this video is my attempt at correcting and improving on that review. Now, before we go any further, let's make sure that all these guns are cleared first. And by the way, if you enjoy this review, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Development of the P-64 began in 1958 in response to a competition for a new Polish service pistol. Basically, the P-64 was the result of that competition. In addition to be called the P-64 or Polish P-64, sometimes you'll hear the P-64 referred to as the CZAK, which is an acronym made up from the first letter initials of the last names of its initial design team members. In 1965, the CZAK or P-64 manufactured at LUCZNIK Arm Factory in Radom, Poland, entered service with the Polish Army, police, and security forces. The P-64 was produced between 1965 and 1983. So the P-64 is basically a military service pistol from the Cold War era. And as was typical for Soviet bloc military firearms during that time, it's chambered for the 9x18 9mm Makarov round. Compared to the 9mm Parabellum NATO round and the .380 ACP cartridges, the 9x18 9mm Makarov is an in-between in size, By the way, I've been told that some P-64s actually still remain in the inventories of the Polish Armed Forces and their police services. Note that that would be 60 years of service. I have to say, that's actually a pretty good run. Now, I've also learned that confusion about the name of the P-64 is due somewhat to these popular names the public has given to this pistol. So it may be called a CZAK or Polish CZAK, as mentioned earlier, or just a P-64 or Polish P-64 or a Radom P-64 after the Polish town location of the factory, Factory 11 in Radom, Poland. Or like this one, it might be called a LUCZNIK P-64 after the name of the factory, LUCZNIK Arm Factory in Radom, Poland. In fact, that's the way this gun was labeled when I bought it, as a ZM LUCZNIK P-64. Regardless, they're all the same gun. Of course, by 1997, the Polish Army began replacing the P-64 with a newly approved military sidearm, the WIST-94, chambered for the 9mm NATO round. That led to the movement of surplus and decommissioned P-64s finding their way into the U.S. market. Most were marketed with 2 magazines, a holster, and a cleaning brush. Today, the Polish P-64 or CZAK remains a fairly popular and reliable everyday carry option, usually at a reasonable price. One more reason for its popularity is the 9mm Makarov round, which is perceived to be harder hitting than a .380 round, yet easier to control than a 9mm Parabellum NATO round. In my review of the Radom P-64 last year, I stated that it was obviously a PPK clone that was based upon several internet references to that connection and visible similarities. But today, I'm convinced that while the resemblance is certainly here, the P-64 is really an original design. For one thing, development of the P-64 would span between 1958 and 1961. Evaluation would take another year, and further improvement modifications would continue until 1965, when the P-64 produced at the LUCZNIK Arm Factory at Radom, Poland would finally enter into service. So that's 1958 to 1965, or 7 years total from initial development to actual deployment. Just seems like a long drawn-out process to produce a simple copy of a well-known firearm. But probably more importantly, I've learned that the P-64 actually holds a Polish patent, which applies to the P-64's unique disconnector, the elongated plate sliding vertically inside the pistol's frame, which provides an internal safety, decocks the hammer when the safety is engaged, interrupts the weapon cycle after every shot fired, and allows the weapon to be reloaded with the safety on. I believe this to be a significant difference. So let's give credit where credit is due. By the way, the P-64 is also commonly referred to as a Makarov clone, or Polish Makarov, but I actually have a Makarov PM, here it is, and the only similarity I can see is in the takedown method, the chambering for the 9x18 Makarov round, and that both are blowback action pistols. So while the P-64 might share characteristics with the Walther PPK and maybe even the Makarov PM, it should be acknowledged as an original design pistol, in my opinion. Influenced by the Walther PPK, sure, probably, but not really a clone. Since my last year's review of the Radom P-64, I've learned that the P-64 typically came to importers with an extra magazine, a holster, and maybe even a cleaning tool. In order to meet the ATF importation requirements for the U.S., P-64s are often equipped with target grips for export in order to qualify as a sporting pistol. However, importers would usually replace the target grips for sale of the pistols to their U.S. customers. Also, most P-64s will have very prominent import markings, like you see on this LUCZNIK example. By the way, don't expect all import markings to always be accurate. I have examples of misleading names of the model, manufacturers, and even country of origin boldly stamped by importers. And here's the thing, P-64s without any import markings, or with inconspicuous import markings like this Radom P-64, will actually earn a premium in the marketplace. and that might be why this LUCZNIK P-64 was priced so low in comparison. In some cases, importers might provide a box, but because the P-64 was basically an imported military surplus gun, I wouldn't expect it. I've seen some in cardboard boxes as well as a few plastic and wooden cases, but I assume that was dependent on the importer or the previous owner. As for specifications, the P-64 is an all-steel, fixed-barrel, blowback, double single-action design pistol chambered for the 9x18 9mm Makarov cartridge. Sights are anti-snag small and black, with a machined-in front and small steel dovetailed rear. Slide serrations on the rear of the slide are moderate in definition. There's checkering on the top of the slide to reduce glare. There's a loaded chamber indicator here, which you can both feel and see when chambered. The slide will hold open after the last round has been fired. There's no slide release. The safety decocker is here, up for fire. Putting the safety on will decock the pistol. The safety decocker is a little stiff, but can be operated with one hand, and it is not ambidextrous. The hammer is small and exposed. Double action trigger pull is significant at nearly 24 pounds. Single action trigger pull is about 3.5 pounds. Trigger reset is quite long, about 1/2 to 5/8 of an inch, but crisp. The grip panels are black plastic with good stippling. The mag release is located here, slightly indented into the heel. Magazines are single stack 6-round capacity with a plastic pinky extension. The P-64 typically came with 2. One of these magazines has the gun's matching serial number etched on it. Extra magazines are still available for about $50. It's the magazine that holds the slide open after the final round. As I mentioned earlier, newer magazines will not work in a first-generation P-64. Breakdown is accomplished by pulling down on the trigger guard, just like the PPK. The barrel is 3.3 inches. The overall length is 6.3 inches. The height is 4.6 inches. Thickness is about 1 inch. Unloaded weight is 22 ounces. The P-64 has a well-deserved reputation as a harsh performer. Last year I referred to the Radom P-64 as having a heavy action, and with a 24-pound double-action trigger pull, I wasn't wrong. Also, the gun's grips and use of the 9x18 Makarov round can deliver a rather uncomfortable punch to the hand. But typical of some of the Soviet bloc Cold War era firearms, the P-64 was built for function, not so much for comfort, ease of use, or looks. It's a sturdy, reliable, tough, no-nonsense pistol built to military standards. The good news is that the P-64's performance can be tamed enough to make it more decent everyday carry pistol with the right attention to its springs and grips. I've already overcome some of this Radom P-64's harshness with the installation of new springs. The LUCZNIK P-64 with its factory springs provides a double action trigger that stacks at the end of its pull, requiring a good amount of pressure. With its 18-pound recoil spring and 24-pound hammer spring, some will find it a challenge to operate. However, function is somewhat improved with this Radom P-64 with its 20-pound recoil spring, which lightens the felt recoil, and a 17-pound hammer spring, which reduces the double action trigger pull by a noticeable 7 pounds. Of course, the heavier recoil spring, while it might lessen felt recoil a little, it does make the slide a little harder to rack. The improved spring came from Wolf gun springs for about $30. Plus note that I've added a grip sleeve. I couldn't find a whole grip sleeve specifically for the P-64, so I just picked up a couple of universal grip sleeves off of Amazon for under $10 for 2. You can check out the installation of this sleeve on my next video, Universal Pistol Grip Sleeves, at episode 2024-30. So in total, I've got about $40 invested in these improvements. Now let me say up front, the overall results are not what I'd call dramatic, but there's still no doubt that this Radom P-64 is much more comfortable functionally to shoot compared to the standard LUCZNIK P-64. What's even more important are the handling benefits as they relate to accuracy, especially during rapid fire. Here we are at the range with these two P-64s. The targets are set out to 25 feet, my standard training distance. We'll start with the LUCZNIK P-64 with its factory springs. I'm only loading 5 rounds each time. I'm not sure what to expect, but my experience with the P-64 is that it can be a harsh shooter, but accurate. Let's see what we get. Okay, that was just downright brutal. My first shot was dead on, and even my follow-up shots were easily on target, but this is an uncomfortable pistol. Let's try it again. This time I'm just going to go straight to single action. Again, my first shot is bang on, and follow-up shots aren't bad. But what a truly painful gun to shoot. Okay, let's move on to the Radom P-64 with its improved springs and grip sleeve. I'm not expecting a huge difference, but let's hope there's improvement. Again, we're at 25 feet with 6-inch targets. This gun has a 17-pound hammer spring, which is notably easier, but I'm just going on to the single action here. By the way, the slide is notably heavier to rack with its heavier recoil spring. Well, I'd have to say that was an improved clustering. And what a heck of a difference in felt recoil. More of an improvement than I'd expected. Wow. Let's move the targets out to 35 feet and see how I do. Again, this was the 17-pound hammer spring and 20-pound recoil spring, and of course I've got the universal grip sleeve installed. Not bad for 35 feet, but let's try that again. This time I'll take my time. Alright, I'm very pleased with that. Again, this was the 17-pound hammer spring and the 20-pound recoil spring installed in the Radom P-64. And of course, I've got the universal grip sleeves installed. Regarding the recoil spring, this 20-pound recoil spring seems to work best for me. If the spring is too strong, the gun can feel too snappy, causing the muzzle to dip down after each shot, affecting target reacquisition. But if the spring is too light, then the gun can feel snappy coming back, also making it harder to track the sights in recoil. What we want is nice balance, and I think that's what I've got here with a tamer felt recoil. But adding the grip sleeve has also made the grips more comfortable. I even stayed at the range and finished off the box of ammo I'd brought, enjoying the pleasure of shooting this improved Radom P-64, something I would not have done with the factory setup of the LUCZNIK P-64. Briefly regarding the P-64's pros and cons, the main cons are that the P-64 is just plain outdated compared to modern options. The 25-pound single-action trigger pull is just ridiculous. And the fixed sights are small, and the recoil is snappy, and it holds only 6 rounds. Makarov rounds are far more expensive than 9mm Parabellum rounds, and I find the recessed mag release is a challenge when reloading. On the other hand, the pros are that the P-64 is considered a reliable pistol. The single action trigger pull is light and crisp. The P-64 is easy to maintain, parts seem relatively available, and there's no question the P-64 is an accurate firearm. And it certainly is an easy, concealable, and accurate pistol that would make a reasonable defense weapon. It's also a Cold War era firearm that continues to hold its value, yet it remains relatively affordable. Disassembly is simple and conventional. Ensure the gun is empty. With the hammer back, pull and lock the slide back. Remove the magazine. Pull down the trigger guard and lock it to the side. Pull the slide back and up. release the slide forward and off the barrel. The recoil spring can be removed as well. Reassembly is just those same steps in reverse. And by the way, sometimes the slide doesn't seem to want to go back onto the frame after cleaning. Try reinserting the magazine and pulling the trigger, and then remove the magazine and recock the hammer. That should do it. I won't go into spring replacement here. I'll just refer you to my Radom P-64 review for information on how to. Wolf Gun Springs has replacement springs for the P-64. You can get a recoil calibration pack and even a multiple hammer spring pack for the P-64. Note that I originally tried the 18-pound hammer spring, but eventually decided on the 17-pound hammer spring, which is the more popular choice. And a 20-pound recoil spring has given me the best all-around comfort and performance. This is an inexpensive and easy-to-do upgrade for your P-64 and well worth the effort. Again, if you want information on how to replace these springs, go to my video on the Radom P-64 and you'll see that it's a fairly simple process. As for price, nothing has changed since last year regarding the cost of the P-64 today. According to Genetron.com, the used price of a P-64 is currently about $425, and True Gun values suggest about $385 for a used P-64. So expect about a $400 price tag on a P-64 in good condition. Trade-in value is about $250. Now, before we end today's video, I'd like to remind you, if you haven't already, be sure to like, share, and subscribe down below. And thanks for watching. Wrapping up, the P-64 has been called by many names: the CZAK, the P-64, the Polish P-64, the Radom P-64, the LUCZNIK P-64, which has added some level of confusion regarding this Cold War era 9x18 9mm Makarov semi-automatic Polish-made pistol. In addition, the P-64 has been mistakenly referred to as a clone of the legendary Walther PPK and even the famous Makarov MP. In my opinion, the unfortunate result has been a distraction from the importance of the P-64. In this video, we explored the facts behind the development of this compact, sturdy, and accurate little pistol, and concluded that, while the development of the P-64 may have been influenced somewhat by the PPK and maybe even the Makarov, the P-64 appears to indeed be a unique design. In addition, we looked at what could be done to tame the notorious stiff double-action trigger pull and harsh recoil of the P-64. The implications are that for a fairly reasonable investment in springs and a good grip sleeve, the P-64 can be improved to serve as an affordable everyday carry weapon. I hope you found this video to be helpful, and remember, any weapon you carry is better than the one you left at home. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll be back for my next tabletop review. Until next time, stay safe.